Dear colleagues, instead of being with all of you at the Eurovox Congress in Edinburgh during these beautiful summer days, I have the pleasure of greeting you from my sofa in Berlin, Germany. Let me first give my special thanks to the organizers of the Congress, above all Heidi Pegler and her team, who have taken the initiative to bring to fruition their painstaking Congress planning in digital form, and thus make possible a virtual meeting between you as participants and us as speakers today. My contribution is the short version and theoretical part of my planned in-person interactive lecture for the Congress, with the topic, How do I actually teach? Discerning method within the kaleidoscope of vocal methods. It is about a topic that has been a passion of mine for years and that I would like to share with you today. Methods in voice teaching. Our teaching method is present in each voice lesson. It is our most important but seldom regarded tool. However, method has become particularly relevant in the current exceptional situation of the corona pandemic. Why is this? At this point, due to the actual circumstances, I would like to extend my introduction beyond the rules of rhetoric and express what is on my mind in the hope of speaking for all of us. For almost 5 months now, the lockdown has forced us to give up our usual face-to-face lessons almost completely and teach online lessons to an extent that many of us could never have imagined before. In many areas, the corona pandemic, with its rigid limitations, has made us recognize what really matters. So also in the area of voice teaching. During these months, we have certainly come to appreciate deeply the value of our former in-person lessons, the precious opportunity of listening directly, face to face, with our own ears and even with our whole body, to the real sound of the voices of our students. We are suffering painfully from the spatial separation and from the enormous difficulty of not hearing the voices of our students properly, distorted as they are by technical filters and falsified by electronic apparatus. The attempt to transform real 3D life into 2D illusion has been most painful and extremely exhausting for body and soul, and both for our students as for us as their teachers. For many of us, existential questions may have arisen, closely connected with, but still throwing a different light on the topic of this lecture. Why do I teach voice? How do I actually teach? What is my main concern in teaching? Which are my strengths? How can I make my teaching method more effective under the actual conditions? So, the pandemic has challenged us to explore our intentions in teaching in order to implement their essence. We have been forced to question and alter our teaching style and adapt it to what is possible under the current conditions. So, one important side effect of the corona pandemic so far can be to bring us a greater awareness about our own method, and to draw our attention to the methodological side of voice pedagogy in general. The movement of my lecture about methods in voice teaching is therefore literally a revolutionary one. It will direct the perspective we normally have as teachers, a perspective most strongly focused on our students, to ourselves as teachers, and to our own teaching method, and furthermore, to the variety of voice teaching methods in general. Methods have a special significance in vocal pedagogy, which is closely related to their astonishing variety. The variety of methods in vocal training is fed by three sources: students, teachers, and music. Students. Every voice is different, and each needs its individual treatment. Teachers. In singing, the body is the instrument. Therefore, the teacher's own voice, his or her tonal concept and perception abilities, and her personal supply of vocal exercises due to the oral tradition of voice training are particularly important. Thus, the formative role of the teacher alone already creates a variety of methods. One often hears, there are as many methods as there are teachers. The third source beyond students and teachers is music. The enormous stylistic diversity in vocal music, from classical, modern classical, to pop rock jazz musical, to folk music and national styles of singing. Yodeling spread all over the world, overtone, and so on, demands a corresponding diversity of methodological instructions. This diversity of methods raises significant questions. How do students and singers find orientation? How do teachers find clarity and position themselves within the voice teaching profession? How do future teachers find access to an authentic teaching style appropriate for them as students of voice pedagogy? I have been training future singing teachers at the University of Arts in Berlin for 12 years now. My main concern has always been not to teach one single method, but rather to let my students get in touch with a broad variety of methods. For this purpose, I invite colleagues to present their special methods in practice. This soon led to the question, how can even widely varying methods be described without judging them and characterized in an objective way? In the course of time, I found 9 distinct parameters to describe a method in its essence. One of the most interesting aspects of this discovery is that the different methods actually contain only a few and largely identical number of elements. The main difference from method to method lies in their arrangement and weighting. In search of a picture that symbolizes this phenomenon, I came across the Kaleidoscope. You will be familiar with this children's toy, a tube containing a small number of pieces of colored glass or plastic, which is rotated to create many different combinations and images, just as various singing methods bring together the same elements in different combinations. In our example, we have seen this is the same kaleidoscope, and it produces such lovely different pictures. So we called this list of parameters the kaleidoscope of vocal methods. In my lecture, I would like to share further some general methodological considerations, and then I will present you the kaleidoscope of vocal methods. Due to time constraints, only the first 3 of 9 parameters will be presented in depth today. The complete kaleidoscope model unfolds its full potential anyway in a practical workshop. At this point, I would like to clear again that the kaleidoscope model is not another voice teaching method, but a tool to describe and characterize different voice methods. The aims of this lecture and my wish is to use the kaleidoscope model to draw your attention to the variety of methodological elements within voice pedagogy and to develop an appropriate terminology for them. To offer you an overview of the wide panorama of singing methods and to provide clarity and to enable you to locate your own position within the kaleidoscope of methods. Now will follow 3 considerations and remarks on method in general. What does method mean? Like all profound concepts, method comes from the Greek language. Meta-hodos means a reliable path towards a goal. It is thus a selection of proven means. Under this condition, we all practice a method, whether we are aware of it or not. Is method good or bad? A limitation? Or a guarantee of quality? No method as such is good or bad, and neither a limitation nor a guarantee of quality. No single method can do justice to all students. Method as such is a pragmatic reduction of a complex teaching content to make it possible for the teacher to give clear instruction. Successful methods are to be found in a middle ground that contained solid elements and combine them flexibly. Therefore, one can also say method at its best is a living dialogue between student, content, and teacher, a path of development for all participants. Since when do we speak about methods in classical voice teaching? The Big Bang for vocal pedagogy happened in the middle of the 19th century, when the experiential knowledge and internal perception of voice, so far practiced in bel canto tradition, met the external view of scientific research of the then upcoming new voice physiology. The invention of the laryngoscope by Manuel Garcia is a symbolic act to describe this meeting. So this decisive meeting was the starting point for the dynamic development of modern vocal pedagogy until today, and especially stimulated the emergence of functional methods. This topic leads us to the second part of my lecture, to the first parameter of the kaleidoscope. The first parameter concerns the basic orientation of a method, whether sound or tone oriented or function oriented. The tone or perception oriented approach to the voice means the requirements of vocal composition are to be implemented and the voice is opened up from the musical point of view. The function-oriented approach to the voice asks, what sound can the voice organ produce? The voice is therefore unlocked mainly from the perspective of its anatomy. In these two pictures we see Farinelli, one of the heroes of the bel canto era, surrounded and inspired by the good saints and spirits of music. And we see our Scottish colleague Eleanor Forbes in functional teaching action. Discussing the two approaches to the voice, we can say, in extreme cases, the sound-oriented approach may jump too quickly beyond the initial conditions of the voice to the music, and thus may not do justice to the individual nature of the voice. The function-oriented approach, in contrast, might get stuck in voice technical aspects and thus not reach the music. Also here, the ability to switch between the two poles would be ideal. This points again to the advantages of methodological versatility for voice teachers. The importance of being flexible in our approach and the use of our tools. At this point, I would also like to emphasize, in practice, singing as a complete unity. If we divide these three elements that are going to describe the second parameter in our theoretical considerations, we do so exclusively to be able to describe them better. These three levels of vocal training, technique, music, and interpretation presentation, is a historic distinction and is already described in the bel canto sources. Richard Miller calls the three technique, musicianship, interpretation. And Joe Estill speaks of craft, artistry, and performance magic. Three main types of voice teachers emerge from these three areas. The first type concentrates primarily on voice training. Miller calls him the voice builder. In German we say Stimmbildner, and describes the technique intense and even the technical mystical teacher. The second type of teachers usually departs from the piano and strives to open up the voice through music. Miller calls him the coach accompanist. The third type, mostly with great stage experience, approaches voice and music mainly from the lyrics and role design. As singing teachers, we certainly don't have to do everything. If we are lucky, we can rely on pianists and scene teachers. But of course, if we can combine aspects of all three levels, voice technique, music, and performance, our teaching method becomes complete and versatile. In the third parameter of the kaleidoscope, we look very closely at voice technique. And also here, we can distinguish three areas, the three areas of function. We have come to understand, as part of basic vocal pedagogical knowledge in our time, that we distinguish three functional areas of the voice. In the recent past, we still used the mechanistic vocabulary of generator, vibrator, and resonator. If we consider the voice not as a three-part apparatus, but as a threefold living organism, we can also describe the three functional areas as stimulating the phonation, producing the voice, and shaping the sound. In an upright model, voice can be described like this. We see the big system below with the first functional area, the little system above with the third functional area, and in between the larynx, where register in pitch and volume are determined. This second area is undisputedly the center of voice training, the middle one, both in sound-related and function-related methods. There is a lot to discuss whether a voice can be opened up from the center or from the frame. I will leave the subject here for now, and this is certainly an interesting and crucial subject to discuss. Richard Miller calls for a balanced approach to all three functional areas. In his Structure of Singing, that for many of you is the Bible of voice pedagogy, he speaks of the need for each teacher to have a systemized technique that covers all the technical aspects of singing. My own work gave me access, through fortunate circumstances, to the treasure of vocal exercises of the renowned German voice pedagogue Franziska Martinsen-Lohmann. I learned her exercises from one of her last remaining students, the now 90-year-old Professor Reinhard Becker, still teaching at his age. This leaves us hope. And over many years I have taken voice lessons with him and learned these exercises. I was able to arrange them according to the three functional areas and include instructions and commentaries. So this model is taken out of the book, and it gives us the structure of the exercises. This work now has been published in book form under the title The 7 Basic Elements of Voice Teaching. Franziska Martinsen-Lohmann has based her voice teaching, which by the way she never wanted to be called a method, on the balancing of opposites. Each functional area contains two poles that can be balanced. Such balancing results in creating synergy in the individual parts as well as in the whole instrument. The voice is a complete unity, a coherent system. It has a tendency to self-organization. And in this respect, Martins and Lohmann is in complete agreement with her functional methods, just as she otherwise built a bridge between the bel canto traditions and the vocal physiology of her time. The 7 elements of voice training are available for the time being in German only. A translation into English is in preparation. So far, we have considered the first 3 parameters of the Kaleidoscope model. The basic orientation of method with its 2 opposing starting points, either sound or function. The 3 levels of vocal training, technique, music, and performance. And seen from a close-up, voice technique with its 3 functional areas. Now I will give you a generous overview on the remaining 6 parameters. The 4th parameter concerns teaching vocabulary. And here you can already see that the first parameter is very crucial and has consequences for the following ones. Tone-oriented teaching is based on understanding, has a more holistic approach, using an imaginative and perception-based language. Whereas function-oriented teaching is based on explanation, is detailed, analytic, and includes the anatomic vocabulary. The difference between both can be illustrated by comparing the following pictures. On the left, the half relief of Antonio di Duccio in Perugia, Italy, on which 2 singing angels with 3 different instruments are depicted that immediately capture our imagination. On the right, an anatomical body model, and beside it, an organ pipe with its clearly marked individual components to explain the function of the voice and their relation to the body. But also independently of the basic orientation of our teaching, it is convenient to be able to switch between these 2 languages. This leads us directly to the 5th parameter, which concerns the teaching models and refers to the interaction between teacher and student in the classroom. Here, we can distinguish between 3 main models: the directive master model, the discovery model, and the dialogue model. In the directive model, the student is strongly related to the teacher, as mostly to be seen in masterclasses. On the other hand, this model may be most useful at the beginning of the training when it comes to the basics of vocal technique. In the discovery model, the teacher provides a safe framework within which the student can experiment. This is certainly useful while working in the musical field. With the dialogue model, the teacher has already withdrawn so far that he or she communicates with the student on an equal level almost. In the best case, the student has even taken the lead here, which is certainly necessary in the field of personal interpretation. Here we can see on the left side a situation from a masterclass, and on the right again a teaching demonstration from the functional lessons. The body language of both teachers alone speaks volumes. On the left, the singer and teacher face each other. On the right, the teacher strengthens the pupil's back and seems to say, "Do your thing, go out into the world." The challenge for the teacher is certainly this: not always to remain in the same position, but alter her teaching model according to the level of education of the student and to the theme of the lesson. Again, the magic word is flexibility. The sixth parameter is dedicated to typologies related to the students and their basic disposition. Typologies are attempts to do justice to the pupils in a more targeted way. The use of typologies is particularly common in singing. There are many different models, from the distinction of the two mental dispositions, introverted, extroverted, through the teaching of the two types of breathing, of the three artistic dispositions, epic, lyrical, and dramatic, the four temperaments, the five Chinese elements, and so on. The topic of typologies often leads to heated discussions. So I would like to leave it at that and show you only two different types of expression, certainly also due to stage situation. The bel canto singer Maria Malibran in an introverted attitude, and 6 contemporary singers in dramatic gestures. The 7th parameter refers to the technical aids used in teaching. These include, for example, aids from physiotherapy to support singing technique, as well as piano, of course, to support the music, as well as larynx models, electronic aids, and recording devices. On the following picture, you can see Franziska Martinsen-Lohmann in a teaching situation from the 50s at one of her masterclasses in Lucerne, Switzerland, with 2 classical tools, a giant mirror and a grand piano. The singer, by the way, is not Maria Callas, but obviously a young lady inspired by her role model. With her special skills, the teacher brings in her own experiences and personality. These skills do not necessarily have to be connected with music. They can also include seemingly remote areas, like, for example, painting, flying, or deep-sea diving. The special skills of the teacher can have a very invigorating effect on teaching, as they are mostly related with her enthusiasm and motivation, as I have mentioned in the introduction of this lecture. The last parameter describes the external representation of method. On the one hand, the closed system of some certified methods with clearly defined teaching contents, such as, for example, the Estill voice technique, the complete vocal technique, or the Lichtenberg model. On the other hand, a wealth of unspecific, sometimes also undifferentiated private methods. A position between both poles has clear methodological elements, which it can handle flexibly and according to the situation. This third position, the synthesis, seems to be establishing itself, especially among young teachers today. Here you can see finally the entire Kaleidoscope model with its 9 parameters. You will find a copy under the materials attached to the lecture. There are 3 major benefits that can come from working with the Kaleidoscope model. For the teachers, gain clarity through understanding their own methodological profile better, and therefore thereby strengthen their professional self-image. If I know what I do, I can do it with more conviction. Find understanding for other methods and approach them with interest, curiosity, and tolerance. And expand our methodological spectrum and thereby nurture our capacity of lifelong learning. The benefit for singers and vocal students can be they can acquire orientation in the variety of methods and find easier access to the right course of study. With the Kaleidoscope model, students of voice pedagogy have a catalogue of criteria at their fingertips that can support them in their internships and in finding access, finally, to their own teaching style. Teachers of methodology can also use the model and discuss it with their students, as some colleagues have told me. I associate two intentions with the Kaleidoscope model. On the one hand, I intend for it to become a useful tool of understanding in the dialogue between vocal pedagogy and vocal science, making both of them equal partners in vocology. On the other hand, I intend that the Kaleidoscope model, by enabling to find non-judgmental descriptions of vocal methods, can contribute to integrative voice pedagogy at the beginning of the 21st century. Integrative voice pedagogy is based on the fundamental conviction that all methods, historical as well as contemporary, personal as well as those with a registered label, have their justification and together contribute to the great panorama of vocal pedagogy. Vocal pedagogy is in a state of change and has to face unexpected new challenges, as we have clearly experienced in the last few months. A willingness to engage in dialogue and a central perspective that leaves the mono-perspective methodological dispute behind may be the hallmarks of a vocal pedagogy of the future. Or to say it in Richard Miller's words, we live in an advantageous age in which the traditions of the past and the information of the present can be combined in exciting ways. The responsibility, excitement, and rewards of our profession lie in our rising to new challenges and to make the present and future of voice training even greater than its history. As vocal teachers, we can remember this: even when the sledding gets rough, no matter how reflective the method, your personality as a voice teacher, your enthusiasm and dedication is still the most important tool in the classroom. With this, you can get even the most challenging students to use their voice in a completely authentic way. Thank you very much for your attention. And in closing, I would like to invite you to the Zoom conference tomorrow at 5 p.m., where there will be an opportunity for question and answers. Materials for this lecture will be available at the AOTOS website. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.